don't typically see cowboys and scientists in the same pasture, but it works because we all have the same goal.
Buck Island Ranch offers a really unique window into the working landscape that gives scientists access to really understanding the complex system.
The ranch here is 10,500 acres. We manage about 3,000 head of cattle.
Because we are such a real-world, full-scale operation, it means that our science is relevant for ranches just like us. Ranch land is such a large land use in Florida. It's 1/5 of the land area of our state. What we do on ranches is really important for saving rare species, for conserving wildlife corridors, and addressing climate change. We do want our science to be relevant and useful for rangelands in other areas.
I think our strength is in coming together and trying to have one voice.
First and foremost, ranches have to be economically viable to stay ranching. And so keeping ranchers economically viable then results in conservation.
Any day-to-day decision that's made is with stewardship and resiliency and sustainability in mind. It's not a theoretical idea, it's a practical and personal thing to us in this place, to be able to make those decisions that ultimately we know for years to come this place will still be here and won't be concrete.
So keeping ranchers ranching starts with that first, and then all the co-benefits come after that.
Because without the land, we can't produce the cattle and the wildlife, and it's all connected. So without one, the other dies.
We always get asked, how does cattle grazing impact ecosystems? Is cattle grazing compatible with wetland restoration? What we found in many cases in many of our experiments is when we compare removal of cattle compared to the cattle grazing that we use, which is rotational grazing, we find that there's more ecosystem services provided with cattle grazing. And actually, if you take grazing away, you start to see declines in ecosystem health. And we lose grasslands and we see shrub encroachment. We have two different main pasture types: improved pastures, which are planted with cultivated grasses, and the other half of our ranch is what we call semi-native. And most ranches have this two types of systems because when the days get shorter, Bahia grass goes dormant, and then the cattle are turned out onto the native grasses that have been growing over the whole growing season, and they form a standing hay crop. By having all of those habitat types, we can provide what the livestock need, we can provide what the wildlife need, and it just makes the whole system function, really holistically and really providing the multiple values.
The way we utilize that for max cattle production is we'll kick our bred cows out to the marshes and let them calve out there, and we bring them in to work the calves at about 3 months of age, and then we'll keep them in the interior of the ranch in the improved pastures for another kind of 2 months before we wean the calves off.
Grasslands don't just occur without some kind of disturbance, and the disturbances that would have created the grassland and supported the grassland here before humans were large ruminants like bison moving across the landscape and creating disturbance and distributing nutrients around the landscape. We don't have those species anymore. The disturbance that cattle bring to this landscape is an important kind of proxy for those old forms of disturbance that would have occurred here.
When you exclude cattle from wetland, you don't necessarily get benefit on many ecosystem services. What we actually found is that when you remove cattle completely from these wetlands, you're losing plant diversity. And that's based on a study for 20 years that we've been surveying those wetlands. Prescribed fire is a really important management tool for us, both for ranchers and the research crew here. So after a fire, most of our forage, like the resprouts, are high quality forage with higher nutrient, higher crude protein. The cows are readily attracted to those recently burned patches. And so we have implemented different types of burning regime across the range to test different aspects. So like the patch burn grazing that we see more out west, that was never really tested in Florida. We tried to implement that here to see what would be the benefit of applying patch burn grazing.
There are certain wildlife that have to have that. They're obligate species that have to have that type of grassland. You couldn't achieve that without the disturbance that cattle bring and that fire brings.
All this used to be wetlands before, and this got drained about 100 years ago. And because of that reason, there's a lot of, when it rains, all the water flows directly into Lake Okeechobee. We maintain all these water level stations, and we provide data on how much water is being held back. So ranches are central in this, because ranches have this high capacity to hold back water. And once water is held back, the plants take up the nutrients and kind of effectively clean up the water. As we know, wetlands are kidneys of the landscape as the old adage goes. Ranches play a central role in regulating water and water quality, not just for wildlife and for themselves, but also for all of South Florida.
These families have been working on the land for generations, and their hard work, persistence, and dedication has what's made these lands in such good condition as they are today. And if our science can contribute to helping it be sustained, then that would be a great outcome.
There's strength in trying to come together and sharing information and everybody kind of knowing the same things and saying the same things, and then sharing that and passing it on. I just find that this community talks to each other a lot, and I think that is one of our strengths. We got one voice, one message, and we're trying to get what we see as important to non-cattle ranching sectors.
As a 7th generation Floridian, I want my kids and my grandkids and their great-grandchildren to be able to experience this way of life.